This conference will now be recorded.
Good day, good evening, whatever time of the day you're watching this. This is going to be a presentation about Norwegian Stave Churches. So to assist in engineers watching this presentation who might be looking for credits. Most of our continuing education or professional development presentations will have a series of learning objectives. I've laid out a number of items, actually 10, that I'm going to be going through in this presentation. Hopefully we'll hit on all of these. I'm going to start with a historical context that leads into a discussion of the medieval period in Scandinavia. I will then go into some of the skills that the Norwegians learned to help them construct these buildings in a structurally sound way that made them last for a long period of time. Um, we're going to go into a little bit of how they modified these structures to avoid deterioration and to correct what was a significant error in the very early buildings. We will go into the building type itself and how it's classified and how it worked structurally. We'll go into how these buildings can be classified organizationally, the similarities and differences between the various Stave churches that exist. We'll go into actually how they built them, the tools they used, and the methods they used to make their connections in the building. We'll also talk about how they preserved the wood. We'll talk about the precision that was necessary to fabricate and install the structural members and siding. We will also touch on what was done to the exterior of the building to keep it from deteriorating over time. We'll talk about how the buildings were decorated on the interior and the exterior, and what is now or what was done recently to these buildings to preserve them for future generations. So first I want to touch on the kind of a little bit of the what I'll call the Viking Age, the historical context, and this is just going to be a brief discussion of it. It's not going to be the whole thing. It's going to be right around the time that these buildings are preceding and what led up to them being built. So the first person that I want to discuss here is Harald Gormson. He was a king of Denmark, and he was in power from 958 to 986. He succeeded his father. And one thing that he was able to do was he was able to unite the tribes of Denmark and Norway. He was a Dane, all right, and then he was successful in Christianizing Denmark. Around the same time is Hakon the Good, king of Norway. He attempts at the same time that, right around the same time that Harold Gormson was successful in Christianizing Denmark, he attempts to Christianize Norway, but does not succeed. Then we're back to Harold Gormson, and his name was Bluetooth. The reason for that was that he had a dead tooth in his mouth, and it made it look, bluish. So they called him Bluetooth. He is, continues that reign from, or this is part of his, a little bit more detailed into his reign of power. So from 970 to 985 is when he unified Denmark and Norway. That doesn't last, but it's significant. Population-wise, at that period of time, Norway had 150,000 people. In a significantly larger area than Denmark. So Norway, 150,000 people living in an area of almost 150,000 square miles. Denmark, at the same time, had an area of only 17,000 square miles. So significantly less, but the population was more dense. All right, it was close to 500,000. So today, the population of those two countries is very close in size. Norway is 5.8 million. Denmark's 5.2 million. So anyway, Harold Bluetooth Gormson unites Denmark and Norway. It doesn't last. The next person to come into power is Olav Tryggvason. He attempts, and this is in Norway now. We're kind of going to forget about Denmark for a little bit because our focus is on Norway. So Olav attempts to forcefully rid the countryside of its pagan practices. Doesn't work out for him. Next after him, following him, is Olav II. He institutes a campaign of attempting to convert people by burning those pagan houses of worship, and uses threats of death and subjugation of the population. And it doesn't really work out too well for him. So next in to kind of significant guy to succeed him is Harald Sergesson. He reigns during a time of instability. During his power, or his time in power, he founds Oslo and has churches constructed there and up north in Trondheim. And those churches were not stave churches, they were stone churches. All right. So in 1066, he tries to invade England. He's defeated there. And then that effectively ends the Viking Age. Last guy we're going to talk about here is Olav Kyrre. During his reign, the Norwegian church is first established and organized, and the first stave churches are built. Okay, so moving on from there. So what you see here are what are known as the gelling stones. And the gelling stones, there's two of them. And behind you, or behind them in this picture, is a large burial mound. So the gelling stone on the right is from King Gorm the Old, Harold's father. And the left stone was ordered by his son Harold. So they had these two carved in their own times. They sit together in Jelling, Denmark, all right, and they are inscribed and carved. So the inscriptions are runes, old Norse runes, which is an alphabet, and we're going to talk about King Harold's stone specifically, focus on that. His monument states in Norse runes, the Norse alphabet, King Harold ordered this monument made in memory of Gorm, his father, and in memory of Thurv, his mother. That Harold, who won for himself all of Denmark and Norway and made the Danes Christian. All right, so this is side one of the stone. Side two of the stone, there's three sides to Harold's stone. So we have like a little triptych here. It depicts a lion entwined by a serpent, and it is thought to represent the battle of good and evil. And the third side of the gelling stone, Harold's gelling stone, it depicts Christ entangled in branches, and this is the oldest depiction of Christ in Scandinavia. So that's pretty significant. And so we see the stone as it is today, outdoors. It has actually been protected since these photos were taken. So there are there's a glass enclosure and a roof over top of them to kind of protect them from damage, from the weather, from erosion. These I didn't use photos of that because it would kind of diminish what we see here. Now there is in the National Museum of Denmark a replica of Harold's gelling stone, and it is painted in the way that it would have been painted back when it was carved. So it wasn't just carved, it had a painting on it. And I want to show, I'm showing you this because this gives us a better idea of what it really looked like back then. And you can really see, Christ, his arms are outstretched, his body forms the shape of the cross. And you can really see the intertwined branches that are around his body. All right, and I bring these into the conversation here because in the 1990s, some engineers from Intel were um, considering or working on the technology that would allow us to wirelessly, with a short range wireless link, connect various devices. And they were trying to figure out a um, a name for this. And the the two engineers were Sven Madison and Jim Kardach. So they were, and as they saw it, kind of like Herald Bluetooth, um, attempting, like they were enamored with the fact that he was able to unite Norway and Denmark, so many years ago. They were also impressed with the fact that Harold's gelling stone not only had those runes on it, but also that it had those intertwined images. And we can't see the one on that side 2 in color, but the snake being intertwined with the lion is similar to this in that there's a lot of interplay between the two. So they had that impression, and they thought it was really interesting and significant. So they came up with the idea to name this wireless connection that would unite devices after Harold the King, but they used his nickname Bluetooth. And they used that as a working title. They thought that somebody else from Intel would come up with a better way, a better name. No one ever did. So it stuck. It was never replaced. And so what they did too was so the name they stuck with, and what they went to as well was they took the runic H, the Norse rune in the alphabet for the letter H, the the letter B in Norse runes. They combined the two into, kind of merged the two together. So they're intertwined with one another. And the logo is a runestone. So I thought that was kind of cool, kind of really interesting, something that could tie this whole thing in together. The fact that Christianity comes to the Scandinavia, and these guys are kind of paying homage to the guy who brought it to Scandinavia, and the unification of the various tribes. All right, so this is more of a placekeeper here, but it is to show that that Norway's a pretty rugged countryside, and there's a lot of water, significantly sized fjords. If you want to move around the country, and sometimes it saves a lot of time to cross the fjords rather than to go around them. So this is a picture of Sonja Fjord, the biggest fjord in Norway. In fact, it's so big that it has smaller fjords that branch off of it. All right, so Sonja Fjord is right here in the country. All right, if you can see my cursor down here, that's Sonja Fjord. All right, and like for instance, coming off it to the north here is the Fjarland Fjord. So the three major cities, Trondheim to the north, Bergen is to the west over here, and then Oslo is down here and at the very end of Oslofjord. All right, so this is the current locations of all the remaining Stave churches. There are 28 that are that still have parts remaining that are medieval. So they're not all medieval. They've changed over time, which is not a bad thing. So what I'm going to do is, so there's none up north. The North Country is lots of Eastbjorns, polar bears. Not completely true, but there are no Stave churches up north. So here we see none remaining. The locations of the remaining 28 plus two others, and I'll talk about those two others, when we get a little bit further along into the discussions here. All right, so the early Norwegians were a seafaring tribe of people. So shipbuilders, that was really important. They were warriors, but they were also involved in trade too. So ships were really necessary for them for travel. So they were really good at building them. Right. This is a reconstruction of the Gokstad Viking longboat, and it is a boat that was that was buried in a burial mound in Gokstadhaugen. Was the name of the area where the mound was, and also Kongshaugen. So those are the old Norse for king and mound. So it was local lore in Gokstad that this was a burial mound. Nobody really believed that it was true. And the farm where this was found, the farmer at the time, his sons started to dig just to see, maybe we should kind of really check it out and test whether or not this truly was a burial mound. So eventually they hit some wood. They called in some experts who eventually excavated the ship. And what you see, this photo is of a reconstruction of that boat. It was in pretty bad shape because it had been buried for hundreds of years. And it sits in the Viking Ship Museum in Oslo. So this is a sectional view of that. And they carbon dated the wood to the year 890. It was excavated in 1880. So almost 1,000 years this Viking ship was buried in the ground. The ship was built using using hand tools, and some connections were done with iron nails, and the iron nails were turned into rivets to help them make a more secure connection that would not release. It is what is known as a clinker boat, which refers to the way that the planks on the ship um, interact with one another. Clinker boats have overlapping planks, and you'll see that it's not smooth on the face of that section. So the panels overlap, and if we go back to um, the photograph, you will see some lines and ridges there, and that is the overlap of those panels. That's called lap stacking. All right. Here's a plan and partial sectional view. The mast is cut off because the mast was 9 to 10 meters tall. And you'll also see that in this museum, the mast is not full height here either. They couldn't fit it in to the museum. Some significant things here. So there's the mast. Here's the mast goes all the way to the keel. All right, and it interacts with the keel of the ship, and then is secured to the deck by what's known as a mast fisk. So a mast fish. So it's kind of in the shape of a wooden fish, and it holds the mast secured to the deck. So if you see this view, here's the mast fisk, all right, and you'll see that there's between that initial connection to the keel and the mast, the mast acts as a cantilever. So it is secured at the deck. And here we have a replica. This is known as the Gaia, but it's a replica of based off of the Gokstad Viking longboat. So this boat was built from 1989 to 1990. But you'll also see here that the mast itself not only secured below, but it's braced to the rest of the ship. Here's another. Actually, but let me continue with this. So these ships were used for warfare, but also trade and transport as well. They're not meant for high speeds or heavy weather. They've tested this Gaia and found that at about 12 knots is its maximum speed. If it goes any faster than that, it starts to take on water, and it's not very good in high seas too. All right, so the next ship that we have here, also, this is another replica of a Viking logboat. This is from Oseberg. So this one was also buried and discovered in a burial mound. The Gokstad ship, in its burial mound, they found one man. All right, he was between 50 and 55, they estimated. He was buried alongside of 12 horses, 6 dogs, and a peacock. It's suspected that he was King Olaf Gudridsson, but that can't be confirmed. But they knew he was a significant man. The Osberg ship was dated to 1834. That's the closest they could estimate. So right around the same era, a little earlier than the Gokstad. This was discovered in a burial mound, and it contained two females. They were estimated to be in one between 80 and 88 years old, and the other was aged 50 to 55. The top speed of this one, it's a little shorter. The Gokstad was measured 78 feet long, 17 feet wide, and the Osberg was about 7 feet shorter, and the mast was not, or was estimated to not be as tall as the Gokstad. All right, so there's room for between the two of these ships. One, the Oseberg, 30 oarsmen, room for 30. The Gokstad, 32, so two more. They're very structurally sound. They're both clinker boats. You can really see here on the Oseberg those that lap strack planking that's run here. So you can see the ridges of that overlap. Okay, so shipbuilding continues to today. This is, I found this in the Oslo Norsk Museum, and they were in the middle of making a clinker ship, a very small one, but same clinker method as the Gokstad and Oseberg. Here we have two working examples of and different sizes, once again, of clinker ships. The clinker ships were really well built structurally. They figured out by overlapping those boards that they really worked together when the boat and the seas reacted with the boat and tried to twist it. All right, so that's the benefit of that method of construction. Okay, here's another replica of a longboat, and you can see, the full height mast, the rigging, and the ropes that brace the mast down to the stern, and the gunwales. All right. So one thing I want to go back to here that I found was really interesting was how the ship was steered. So in the back here is secured what is known as a starboard. So that side of the ship where it was steered from, the starboard is what we now call the starboard. So that when it came into port, and I'll show you here, and docked, back here, it's kind of tough to see in this photo, but is the starboard, and that was never the side that would face the dock. So the opposite side from the starboard or starboard side is the port side, because that's the side that went up against the dock. And the reason for that was to not damage the starboard, which you needed for steering. Okay, so remember how they secured. They fastened the mast down to the keel, right? Also secured it at the deck line, and they took that knowledge and information, and when they started to build Stave Churches, they used that same method. or idea to make it more structurally sound. So this is a sectional view through the Hopperstad Stave Church. And what we see here is the ground line. And you'll see I've dashed in lines here to show that the staves, the posts and columns that structurally support the church, are buried down into the ground. So they excavated, sunk those staves down like they did the masts, and into the keel, and below deck, right? So that becomes an element that really helps the structure to work together. Um, that didn't work out over time because burying wood in the ground doesn't work out too well over a long period of time. It does tend to decay. Um, they did, beneficially for them, use wood in the construction of the stave churches that resisted decay. So, and those the wood used was ora pine. That type of pine, old growth pine, what they did before they harvested it was that they cut the branches off and they left the trunk of the tree standing. And what took place over time was that the resins in the tree rose from the roots up into the timber that was left, and those resins permeated the whole structural column that remained. They left that over time to allow that to age. When they cut it down, the resins were something that really helped to for those staves and columns to last for a long period of time. It didn't work out when it was buried in the ground, but the remaining portions of those pieces of wood, it gave them longevity. All right. So when they found over time that there was that decay of those the columns, what they did was they excavated in a very phased fashion. You couldn't excavate the whole thing. They cut off individual ones, and built stone foundations gradually around the structure, and also installed sill beams. All right, so they interconnected the columns into these sill beams, and then interconnected all of those columns and sill beams together. All right, so this is the Hopperstad Stave Church today, or actually 20 years ago. That's when I took this photograph. All right, and this is a close-up view of the stone foundation now at Hopperstad. You can see the sill beam and the interconnection of these sill beams with the staves at an outside corner, and really an inside corner here too. They are notched and interwoven with one another very precisely, but hand tools were used. This is a photograph of the sill slash column slash sill foundation detail of Ringaboo Stave Church. A little bit different than Hopperstad. All right, and here is more of a pulled back view of Ringaboo, you can see two of those interconnections with these exposed bracing members as well. All right, so the Norwegians took the things that they learned from shipbuilding, but during the course of their history, they were also building their dwellings, and they were building farm buildings and outbuildings from their dwellings. So this is a Stauber. This is a drawing done by Adolf Tiedemann in 1864. Very, very cool drawing. I love this style of drawing. Um, but you see these Staubers all over the place, and they really do still look like the decoration and the carvings and everything, just like Tiedemann's build sketch. So this is one located in the Norse Folk Museum in Oslo. You can see now this is also elevated above the ground on stone piers. All right, I suspect that these were done the same way as the Stave Churches previous. They would sink the posts down into the ground. Well, they learned from this. They learned that wasn't the greatest method to for longevity's sake. All right, a little bit more detail of this Stauber. This is a Stauber from another part of the country, just the foundation detail that, and if I kind of zoomed in on this, the quality is a little sketchy, but it shows you a little bit more of a close-up view. All right, and you can see the interconnection of this joinery technique used. All right, these are more buildings in that Norse Folk Museum in Oslo, and you'll see something that has become a little bit more common today in the U.S. is a living roof that's been used in Norway and the other Scandinavian countries for centuries. And the waterproofing material used originally was birch bark. Here you can see it kind of exposed at the eave. All right, and the Norwegians also built, some very large barns as well. So they took the information and their learning from them and used those techniques on the Stave churches as well. So most of these were, multi-story barns. I thought this was great. This very unique, circular route used to get to the second floor in this barn to utilize the storage. I mean, if you don't do something like that, then you're doing and installing like this one a pretty steep ramp to get up there and to take advantage of the storage. All right. So this is the kind of thing that you would see inside of these old buildings. This is braced frame construction. And you'll see here hand constructed truss work. And the connections are all done by hand. Very few nails used. Nails were difficult to make. They were not readily available. So the primary fastening methods were hand tooling and joining carpentry techniques. So I mentioned these are the barns or that barn here is a braced frame structure. This also is a modern braced frame structure. And What you see here is the structure itself. This is a photo that I found that could show the structure without any siding in place, so that you can get real feel for how these buildings were built. So I'm going to put up this little diagram here. Hopefully it's easy enough to see. So bracing is essential in these buildings. You'll hear them called post and beam structures as well. But the post and beam structures don't work well unless they are properly braced. So you need that triangulation, and because every structure has wind that blows against it, and when in order to keep these structures plumb, straight, and true, the bracing is necessary, so that what doesn't happen is that we don't get this rectangular prism become a parallelogram. All right, so the bracing is there to keep it rigid. It's going to flex in the wind, but without the bracing, you have potential problems that you don't want to deal with. All right, so the building type here of all of these Stave churches is essentially a braced frame structure. All right, that's what resists those wind forces. And you'll see the bracing here, all of those triangles, and in some places you see these arches too. That's all to keep this structure sound. Okay, this is a building that in Milford Township, Pennsylvania, that we worked on in my office, MHE Engineering, and it is a braced frame structure. So I thought, why not show you a building that I'm intimately familiar with? You'll see, yes, there's some steel in here, but that was to reinforce the design. We weren't comfortable structurally in having this act without some steel reinforcing. The builder was Amish. The owner of the building wanted to have somebody intimately familiar with this method of construction. So he got an Amish builder and who was really familiar with and really good at making those hand tooled connections. You see the bracing here, the Y bracing between this this mid-level beam and the high beam above. You do see some piping and conduit inside of here. It had to be a fully sprinkled building to protect it, because it was going to be a catering hall. So with people in it, with that occupancy, there needed to be sprinklers. So there is some of that inside of this structure. But here you can really see that that type of construction, the mortise and tenon joinery with pegs. All right. Now this building here, actually a couple of these buildings, when we have a braced frame structure and the structure is visible on the exterior, this is called half timbering. It's a very honest method of construction. Honest because we see the structure of the building in the exterior. Some might call this Tudor style. It's not really correct. it's half timbering. Okay, and we see the horizontal beams, the vertical posts, and the bracing members all over in this building at the kind of the end of this little street, and this one here. This is also a half timbered building. Okay, so now I want to get into the further into the development of these structures and the organizational features of them. I had a number of reference materials. Love this book by Gunnar Bugge. He and I utilized his organizational system for this part of my presentation. He looked at the remaining Stave churches, and you'll see here there are 30 listed. But he did his study in the mid to late 1980s. So there were these 30 that he looked at that really still had the remaining features of the medieval age when they were built. So we have 11 buildings that would be classified as type A. So he considered that as a no mast structure or a single mast structure. So by no masts, what he was talking about was no masts, no columns, no staves. Okay, there are corner posts in these, very simple structures. So a single nave and a single chancel at the back end of the building. All of these first 11 are originated like this. And here I have the approximate dates of when they were built. So you've got everywhere from the earliest of 1147 to 1470 was the latest. And I think that's the latest one of all of these. All right. And then he's got another 3 here that are single nave with central mast. Okay, an additional one that he considered to be transitional type A/B. I mean, I totally agree with him in how he's kind of organized this as well. This transitional building has 4 masts within that nave. All right, and once again a chancel, and these single nave with central mast, and the 4 stave or 4 mast also have an apse at the back of the chancel. And then we have type B structures. Now they don't all look like this. I've used the plan here from the Borgund Stave Church, built around 1200. And these are estimated times. There's some debate over the truly when they were built, but these are pretty good estimates. And one thing you'll notice between these are much more complex than the simplicity of the single nave and single chancel. You've got a whole series of columns or staves in the middle of the nave. All right. And some have a gallery around the outside, some do not. All right. One thing you'll notice too here is that um, there wasn't a progression of from simple to complex. There are ones that were built. So the earliest one we have is is actually that some of the older ones are some of the complex ones. So Hopperstad Stave Church at 1130 AD or CE, and you've got Kopanger at 1140, and then up here we've got Öye at 1125, Undredal 1147. So there wasn't this development from simple to complex. They were all being built around the same time. Okay. So it's kind of interesting in that we didn't have that progression from simple to complex um, because there were multiple builders of these structures and they kind of learned from what they had built previously. So I took Gunnar Bugge's floor plans, and he had scale to his drawings. They were very small, but I put them into AutoCAD in scale so that I could see these in relation to one another. And I've organized them. This is all type A Stave churches. So these are the very simple ones. All right. You'll see some have the gallery around the outside. Most do not. We've got really three with the, surrounding gallery at Rhinley, and then Hedelen and Edsborg have a partial gallery around them. But they're all very simple structures. All right, and then we have the complex ones. And I put the transitional area, transitional A/B up in the upper left-hand corner here with a kind of highlighted. But you'll see, some are very rectilinear. Kaupanger, Ernest, Hopperstad, and then we get into some that are, quite complex. And these are the way that they were from the medieval time, too. So these had the gallery all the way around them, Hedal and Borgund, very early on. And some of these, and you will see in some of my photographs, we will look at Gaul, and that has a partial gallery that's been added to it over time. Okay, so let's start with one of the type A structures here, and this is Holtalen Stave Church. Very simple, single nave, single chancel, 20 by 16 nave, about a 10 by 12 chancel. Very simple structure, but it's at the roof that it gets a little bit more complicated. We see hand built scissor trusses here. So the structure itself very simple. It has been moved from its original location. It's now in the Sverresborg Trondelag Folk Museum. All right, it was moved there in 1937, so it's been here for quite a long period of time. All right, and don't be confused by the different colors of wood. Those are from the fact that it's been treated on the outside. This is where that exterior treatment has weathered away, and it's probably ready for a new treatment. We'll talk about that later. All right, you can see the stone foundation, Very simple structure, all wood, all right, except for the foundation. These are, it's a wood shingled roof. Here is a detailed view of the stone foundation, sill beams, and the interconnection of the stave and that sill beam. In fact, you can see it's really a double sill beam. You got a sill beam down here, and then there's another one here. And there is a connection between this ball joint here. So this beam goes through, and there's one coming from the other direction. This cutaway here is the other sill beam making its way all the way through this kind of ball joint, for lack of a better way to describe it. All right, we are looking at up at the roof here. This is roof sheathing. This is the top beam, and this is a rafter. You'll see a peg here. There's a joint where this piece of wood, this knee brace, is inserted into the rafter beam, and that peg is connecting this to that. All right, here we see the scissor trusses. Here's another view of that. You know, we were kind of zoomed in right here a minute ago. And here's that arched knee brace that helps connect the beam with the roof truss. Okay, so this is a Stave church in Iceland. It was a gift from Norway to Iceland, and it is a copy of the Holtalen Stave Church. It was built in Norway, near Lam in Norway. The parts were labeled, it was deconstructed, and then it was shipped to Iceland, where they rebuilt it. And here they have installed a gallery all around the outside after the fact. So, and it hasn't been in Iceland for very long. Construction took place and ended in the year 2000. So after that, I guess to make this more weather tight, the gallery that surrounds it was added. It's something that was pretty common too, that, you know, Stave churches changed over time. So this is a little bit to show you the rugged nature of Norway. There's a lot of water, there's a lot of mountains, there's a lot of snowy peaks, and this is summertime. So next we see Uvdal Stave Church. This is type A structure, but it has the central mast. All right. So Uvdal, this is how it started in the medieval times, but it changed over time. There were additions and alterations to it. This is what it looks like today. It lacks the appearance of that simple structure that it once was. All right. And this is from Gunnar Bugge's drawings, the plan and the sectional view of the church. Now we see this, you know, cruciform plan. We see a fully developed nave and chancel. We've got these side aisles creating that transept and the cruciform plan. And here we see the interior. Quite a bit different from the Holtalen, right? No decoration in that one. whereas this is very bright, very joyous, very colorful. There's these very floral paint job that was done on here, and that's on the walls and the ceilings. And what's separate here, and this is quite common, was that all of the Christian iconography is added to the building. It's not painted on the exterior walls so that the paint does not deteriorate. So it's separated from the walls. In some instances, it's hung on the walls, but it is not painted on the walls themselves. That's to help preserve them. All right. So quite colorful, quite joyous, I would say. So here, once again, we have a little bit of a setting piece. This is, I believe, this is Fjarland Fjord. Okay, so next church we're going to talk about is Øya. It is the transitional, the A/B organization. So we've got 4 staves, all right, in the middle of the nave. And the plan I'm showing you here does not kind of match up with the section, all right, because the plan today has a gallery all the way around. It started out as just this simple floor plan that's darkened in, and the lighter stuff was, like I said, added over time. All right, simple structure. You've got these, braces at the columns, the arched braces. Once again, just like Holtalen, it's a handmade on-site made scissor truss to support the roof. We have roof purlins interconnected with those, and then wood planking and wood shingles. All right, this is Øya. And like a lot of these churches, it has been moved. It used to sit closer to the lake that's nearby. It was moved to a higher elevation. This is the guide who, at a lot of these churches, if you go during, operational hours, there'll be a guide there who helps tourists. Unfortunately, I speak very little Norwegian. I was able to, speak a few words, learned a few words. Unfortunately, this woman knew no English, so there was not much information that I got from her about the building. Very nice, sweet lady, but big language gap. So here you can see she's standing in the gallery space. This is her with my daughter. This was taken in the year 2000. So you can see there's these little, arched openings and posts that hold up the roof structure. Here's a view in one side of the gallery. You've got, almost like a saloon type door that doesn't fully close off the gallery, and obviously there's air can move in here, but it's much more protective of the main structure of the building to have these galleries in place. All right, and it's a stone floor, so it is down at grade, and the rest of the church is elevated higher. So you step up into the church structure, and here you can see you step over the sill beam here, And then you step even higher up into the church itself. So here we are looking at the the roof of the church, all right, with the scissor trusses. You can tell repairs have been done to this structure just by the color of the wood, but there is no decoration on the inside of this, no extra painting. It's very bare. There's almost like I would call it an aesthetic. All right. The only thing that it's painted with any color here is the cross, and it really is that's significant because it really points out what are the people there for? They're to you know pray to Christ. Very intricate carving around the portal. Same with the front door. The front door portal, all around it, lintel and the two sides, and the same with here. The the two posts and the archway. Very intricate carving. Here's the front entry. Very cool representations of animals intertwined with one another, dragons and um, biting into one another. And here's the cross. Here's that green that really stands out on the interior of this one, but very bare and just lets the structure speak for itself. All right, the beauty of the wood comes through, and you really can see those those elements that are supporting the structure, the trusses up above and the bracing members down below. So once again, another scene setter here. This is once again looking across Sonia Fjord and a ferry boat ride between. I believe we went out of Vangsnes and over to, I thought it was Balestrand, but not quite sure. So this is our next type B structure. It's our example of that. So we're going to look at Borgund, Stave Church. It's type B. Its plan is much more complex. It's got an original gallery all the way around the outside. All right. And it's got, what do we have? 12 interior columns. All right, or stops. Okay, this is Borgund, very beautiful. The wood is very dark because of the preservative treatment that they use. You've got these really cool depictions of stylized dragons' heads. You also have crosses. There's no mistake that this is a church. And you've got these individual shingle siding compared with, planks. We do see some metal work, but it's sparse. And this is the back view of the rear apse, looking towards from the back towards the front of the church. A little bit more of a detail of the roof and those ridge dragons. Okay, here's the portal. Once pretty common, just like some of the others. The portal is very decorated. The entrance is something to behold in a lot of these. The carving work is just amazing. So here is we're looking up at the roof, and you can see all of the staves here going all the way up, supporting that upper roof structure. Scissor trusses once again, and we've got this complete row wrapping the inside of or wrapping the whole structure that is X bracing. All right, it's decorative, but it's very structural. Everything in these buildings, um, there's total efficiency here. Everything has a purpose. Every piece of wood is there for structural purposes. Now, there's decoration that's done to them, carving work, but every piece has a structural function. All right, and here we are in the nave looking towards the chancel and the altar. Got this really cool elevated lectern here. All right, so those are examples of the different types of buildings. We had the type A with a central mast, transitional, yeah, A/B, and then Borgund the B. So we're going to move on and we're going to talk about how they fastened these structures, the connecting technique done with carpentry. So this is a mortise and tenon joint. The mortise is the hole. The tenon is from the connecting piece that fits snugly in. And then what would happen is once that tenon is into the tenon from this beam goes into the mortise of this post, it is drilled out and a peg is hammered into the hole, and it's a wedge-shaped peg, so that as it's hammered in, it's pushing outward and really fitting those together tightly. These are various different types of mortise and tenon joints. We've got a standard, we have a shouldered, so there's like a notch here, as well as beveled. All right, this is a housed mortise and tenon joint. So it has a shoulder as well, but it goes more in. And I put also a dovetail in here. It's not very common in these, but it does exist. This is more of a furniture connecting detail, but it does exist in some places. I found these from a Norwegian book that I purchased when I was there. Some of the same joints, but there's the Norwegian names to them. All right, so here's a detailed view of a mortise and tenon, two mortise and tenon joints, and these are standard. And you'll see the pegs going through there and the peg going through there. Oops, went too far. This is a bracing member going into a shouldered joint. So that little notch there is the shoulder. All right, and there's the peg. Here's a dovetail joint. Okay, and then here is a dovetail at a building corner. So we've got the need to interconnect these horizontal timbers to one another, and that's a really great way to do that, to cut them out in such a way that they really fit snugly together. And that's going to work structurally really well to keep that building plumb, square, and true for its life. So we can't talk about these joining techniques without talking about the tools that they used. So there were no, power saws. Everything was done with hand axes, adzes. This is an adze. It's used kind of like an axe, but the blade is turned. So, you would hit it and carve the lengthwise across a timber. This is a scavel used for shaping the wood. It's a form of a draw knife, all right, but with a rounded blade, curved blade. This is a skilva, similar to this, similar purpose, pulled across the surface of a timber to shape it. Wood chisels are used. All right, wooden mallets, not, metal headed hammers, because wood was much more easy to get and a wood mallet was much easier to make. So here you see someone carving a sculpture using a wood mallet and a chisel. Here, this woman carpenter is using a heavier wood mallet and what's known as a gouge. So the gouge has a curved cutting blade compared to a chisel, which has a flat blade. So using a wood chisel, two ways. First, just hammering along that surface, and then what's known as paring. So slicing very meticulously away to really fine-tune joints. So this is a plane dragged across the surface to smooth out a timber. And here you can see a mortise waiting for the tenon to be inserted. Same with over here on this timber. This gentleman's using a draw knife. It's pulled back across the wood, has a sharp flat blade. Okay, and you can do some, really intricate stuff with that draw knife. All right, here's the beginnings of, he's chamfering the edges of the post, and then he's got this kind of nice carved finish detail at the very top. And then the carpenter has begun to chisel away and carve the surface of the timber. And here's a tenon. Okay, all of this, you can see the different sized wood mallets. This has all been carved away. These could be, platters or serving trays. Okay, another shot of Norway from the water, looking up at a farm on the side of the fjord. Okay, so I want to talk for a couple minutes about siding techniques. So lapstrack siding, we would call this shiplap siding. So it is rabbited out, all right, on the edge. So I have an example of it here, not just that hopefully you can see. So here is, this one you can see a little bit better, the rabbited out portion, all right? This would be, like this in the wall, or it would be running vertically. All right, it's rough sawn, okay? And on the other side is smooth, and there are some of both on these Stave Churches, all right? So that shiplap there, the rabbiting out makes it more weather resistant. It's tougher for air and moisture to get through that joint. This is what's known as a V-groove shiplap, just a little bit more of a decorative chamfering of that rabbit. And then this one, didn't see this in any of the Stave Churches, but I threw it in here just as, it's a more decorative form of siding. This is called coved shiplap. Still rabbited at the one end, but this cove just has more highlight and more shadow lines that you can see. So examples of this of siding. Here we have vertical lapstrap siding on the back of the Gall Stave Church. And here at the Lam Stave Church, you've got horizontal lapstrack and vertical at the bottom. So up in the gable end is the horizontal boards, and then down below are vertical boards. Okay, once again, just a scene setter here. There is just another view of a fjord and how rugged Norway is. This is just Breen Glacier, the leading edge of it. All right, and this is summertime, and it got pretty chilly there, even during the day. So it's very important to discuss the next topic, which is how did they preserve these structures? So weather is it can be pretty extreme there. It's on the North Sea. It takes direct hits from storms coming from the North Sea. So the Scandinavians, not just Norwegians, but the Finns and the Swedes and the Danes all utilized pine tar as a way to preserve things. They also did other things with it, but we won't discuss those here. They had many uses for pine tar. And the pine tar that came from Scandinavia was considered high quality. So it was an export good. They, shipped it and traded with other countries. So in order to make this, though, this is a diagram that I drew from an old drawing that I found. And this is a pine tar kiln. So it's a section through. The wood that has resin in it that's going to be extracted is stacked up. At the very bottom here is a wood grate. And below that is piping that leads down to a funnel and a barrel. All right. This is carved into the side of a hill, and the very base and the side walls here would be done in stone. Birch bark lines this thing to make sure that when it's cooked down, that the pine tar goes down to the grating, and it's covered with wood chips, which are burned. That's really what the flame, all the flame is, and then it's covered in sod or peat. So here's a bird's eye view of the mound of wood that's been stacked, the peat on top, and here exposed on the edge is the kindling, the wood chips that will be burned. All right, there's a high flame or a high temperature, but this, the fire goes on for days, and somebody has to watch over it. And gradually, the resin it oozes out of the wood as it heats, and that's what's captured. So that pine tar is, and this is an ancient pine tar kiln excavated in Sweden. All right, so you can see in this case, it's all stone, kind of beveled out area, and it would go down, and the barrel would be stuck at the very, into this hole. So here you see that is pine tar down there. So pine tar can be applied um, with brushes, with a roller, or with low pressure spray. So I have with me here two pieces of wood. The one is untreated, and this one has been treated with pine tar. You can see the difference in color here. And I purchased some pine tar, so you can see really how dark this is. And it really has this very smoky smell. All right, so that in order to be applied, the pine tar is mixed in a 50-50 ratio with linseed oil, and it makes it much more fluid. If I poured that pine tar out, and it's almost like molasses. So it's applied to all of the exterior surfaces of the buildings, and it's been used for centuries. And it was used before the Stave Churches were built too, on their ships. You can see here it was a form of weatherproofing, and it worked really well on the ships, and so they used it on their other structures too. So yeah, we saw before clinker style of boat construction. This is carvel style. It is flush planks. All right. And when the planks are flush, there's a joint between them that has to be filled. So it is filled with a fibrous rope, could be jute, could be horsehair or animal hair. All right, that's formed into a long rope, and it is hammered into those joints between the planks. And then that the panels themselves and the jute fibers or jute rope is all treated with pine tar, hot pine tar. And pine tar can only be applied when the temperature is above 60 degrees. All right, so summertime. And some days in the summer in Norway, it's not even 60 degrees. So that's how the exterior, and you can see it was used on boats. It's being applied to this ship. And now we're going to talk about the interior of these buildings. So here we see the interior of the Flesburg Stave Church, where the walls have been painted with, a very, it's colorful, but it's reserved. It's not that flourishes that we saw at Ufdal. This is very reserved, very respectful, very nice, and colorful, but it's a much more staid painting job. Very nice. I mean, it really looks beautiful. And here, just as comparison, this was Ufdal that we saw just a little while ago. Very floral, very colorful, very playful. This is not so playful. very respectful. So those floral patterns, beautiful, colorful. These walls have been treated like a canvas. So this is Roldal Stave Church, similar to Uvdal, where you've got that floral paint job at the ceiling and at the upper portions of the walls, and then down low on the walls is a almost a depiction of fabric. All right, here you see, and it's all in the area down, probably from about 7 feet or so down, or maybe 2 meters, 6 feet, a little over 6 feet. Here's the bracing of the walls. Once again, every piece of wood has function. We've got a lot of bracing here that's helping this structure stand. But the ceiling and walls are painted with, very floral and vegetative paint job. And you can see all those Christian icons are not part of the walls. They're hung from the walls. Same with the cross and same with the altar. It's not connected to the wall. It's separate. So it's not exposed to the moisture that could seep through the exterior walls, even though they're treated with pine tar. And there also is, these carved decorative stanchions between the church pews at the end of the seats. Here's our Christian iconography. It is hung from the ceiling. Once again, it's not directly attached to the wall. So it's not going to take that moisture from there. And here's an instance where the iconography is painted in as part of the structure, but it's not an exterior wall, and it's the apostles. And they're part of the railing system for the organ loft. At Torpo Stave Church, most of the structure is kind of like we saw at Borgund or Uya. But here above the altar is kind of like a baldachin, this arched baldachin, and that's the decoration. That's the Christian iconography, not connected to the structure, separated from the structure. Here at Norway Stave Church is a floral painting up above, amongst and separated by almost architectural or trim-like painting. And then down below is a much more architectural, like almost a colonnade, it has been painted. And then the ceiling also has decoration on it. And you can see the iconography, once again, separated from the wall, and in this case, hanging from the ceiling. Attached but separate from the ceiling. And this is Rollock, and similar to, it takes a little bit from a couple of the different churches. So if we go back to Flesburg, we've got this really kind of reserved paint job throughout the whole structure. Well, here at Rolog, we've got that reserved paint job in most of the structure, but then at the altar, we've got this really architectural and floral intermix again, just like Nora. And I really like this one. You can see a series of arches, almost like a colonnade around the outside that surrounds you here. And then we've got, flowers and fruit up above. Very decorative, very, very interesting, and a totally different feel from the others. All right. And this is Gall Stave Church. So this is in Oslo. And like Borgund, like Oya, it is very staid. It's very, the wood expresses itself. It's not painted except for the Last Supper on a curved wall inside of the rear apse of the church. So once again, it's not the rear wall, it's inboard of the rear wall, but it follows the same shape as the apse. But this is the, decoration of the church. So here we are at Ernest Stave Church, and the beauty of this one is the wood carving. It's just amazing. Very intricate, very vegetative and animalistic. It's got these serpents and dragons that are interconnecting with one another and kind of biting into one another where the the pieces come together. This is the portal going into the church, very intricately carved. Even the door itself is carved. Not in the kind of relief as the portal, but, beautifully done. And even this gable you can see the vegetation that on the surface. It's a little eroded, but beautiful. All of the column capitals in the church are carved on all four sides with various different figures. All right. There's griffins. There's humans. There are centaurs. There are kraken. So here's an image of a kraken. So there's these mythological beasts, and this is Kerberos, we call it Cerberus, the two-headed dog that protects the doorway to the underworld. This is Jormungandr, sorry, a serpent that's always seen as eating its or biting its own tail. A griffin, a Fenrir, a wolf, Aragorn, who's a horse that can fly. So there's all these mythological beasts, but there is also humans, pilgrims. Another carved image of a griffin. And then you can see that the columns themselves, as they go upward, are also carved. So on the exterior of these buildings, you'll see very frequently that they've taken decoration elements from the Viking longboats. So we see the Osberg ship's prow, very decorative. Here's another ship's prow with a dragon head. And on where the gable meets the ridge on a lot of the churches, there are these very stylized versions of wood carved dragons. That's Borgund. This is Fantoft, also known as Fortun Stave Church, and you can see the tracery on that ridge, decorative ridge beam as well. This is a more detailed view. Fantoft was a church that was a victim of arson, and so it was rebuilt in the 1990s. So this is a much newer element. They built it based off of the old building. And here you see the Lomstov Church, and you've got the dragons and crosses. So you see the Norse elements here, and you also see the Christian elements. And I'm not sure if they were, hedging their bets, maybe unsure, do we really, do we want to ignore all of these, pagan symbols and gods that and deities that they've idolized for years? So, that's why you see these elements intermingled inside of these churches. This is Gaul. You've got the crosses, Christian elements with dragons and dragons. So it's a very interesting interplay. And one thing I found when I was there too was that these structures have influenced other buildings throughout the country, and you see them near and far. So this building was a roof of a building not far from the Gallstav Church in Oslo, and it's got that decorative ridge beam. It's got that stylized dragon head. It's different, but that's where it's taken from. And I thought this was, I took this shot because the birds were up there too. I just thought that was really neat. So this is the Holmenkollen Ski Lodge, or this is what it looked like 20 years ago. I think it's been modernized, but you can see that it's not close to the Gallstav Church. But look at the dragon. Look at those those carved ridge pieces. All right, that's all as a thank you to the it is paying homage to those decorative elements of the Stave Churches. All right, so the last thing I want to discuss here too is that in 2002, a program was begun by the Norwegian government to restore these Stave churches, thankfully, to save them for future generations. And a lot of money was put into these. A total of 130 million kroner was spent, equal to 16 million US dollars, on those remaining 28 churches. All right. So this is some of the work that was done on Borgund. And here we see the church before it was, the scaffold was on it. You see the scaffolding on the bell tower. And then back here is what's known as Borgund New Church. And it's not very new. It was built in 1868. But it is where services are held. The Stave Church now is a museum, and only special events would be held in these, and that goes with a number of these churches. So extensive repair work was done on these, and it was to bring them up to kind of equally all of these structures up to a level of repair and care to help them last for many more years. New elements were put on. You can see new shingles here, new crosses. at the roof peaks. All right. But in the end, what do they treat them with? Pine tar. Same old material. I mean, why not? It works. It's quality material. It helps these structures last for, or it has helped them last for centuries. So this is this, and last time I visited Norway was in the year 2000. So this is my family back then, my wife and two daughters. They probably look a little cold. It was kind of an overcast day and a little chilly, and maybe a little bored of Stave Churches. In fact, I'm sure. And this was probably their sentiment back then was, oh no, not another Stave Church. Um, so, at this point, when I gave the lecture in person, I took some questions, a number of different questions, ones that I've now integrated into this presentation. Kind of the only one I think I left out was somebody asked me how tall was the Borgund Stave Church. I gave in the presentation an estimate of about 45 feet, which I went back today and back to Gunnar Bugge's, scaled drawings, and I was pretty accurate. It was about between 45 and 50 feet, depending upon whether or not you include that little finial on top of the roof. So I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation and maybe learned a little bit more about Stave Churches, maybe tweaked your interest to find out some more. There's a lot of information out there that I couldn't, be able to completely get into during the course of this. And I just want to acknowledge, and I did with the photographs where I knew that I took them from, gave credit to those who shared photos with me and ones that I was able to find online. And if their name was there and I, could put it in here, I did. There's also some books here where I've listed, and this is, what just an amazing little book. I have a number of other ones that I got when I went to and visited some of these. You could buy a little book at a number of the churches. So once again, thank you for tuning in, and hopefully, like I said, you have learned something, and there's something you can take away from this presentation. Thank you very much. My name's Andy Warren. I'm a practicing architect and really interested in history. So, and these things really, tickle my fancy, buildings like this. So, if you don't have to look at Gunnar Bugge's book, but you can, grab a hold of, and there's sources on huge amount of information online. So thanks again for tuning in.